You are listening to the Cricket Corner podcast with me, Vatsal Vora. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Cricket Corner podcast with me, Vatsal Vora. Quite self-explanatory if you personally ask me. We are here to recap and reflect on the 2024 Indian Premier League auction, which happened yesterday on the 19th of December, Tuesday in Dubai. And yes, a lot of interesting picks, a lot of money spent all over the auction table under the hammer. Players went under the hammer, picked up for large sums of money, and a lot of things to reflect on. This podcast will probably be divided into two parts. In the first part, I'll talk about the top picks, the players which have earned large sums of money. And in the second half of the auction, we'll talk about individual teams and their picks. Some interesting, some questionable. We'll discuss about each team towards the latter stages of this podcast. So stay tuned for that. And make sure you tune in to listen to what I have to say about your favorite team. So yeah, without wasting much time, let's get into this. And we'll start this podcast by talking about some of the big picks. And before we do that, we have to say that according to the IPL website, there were 72 players sold yesterday, 30 of them being overseas players, which totaled to 230 crore rupees. That is massive chunks of money for an auction which is labeled as a mini auction. This wasn't a mega auction where teams were gunning to buy 10, 12, 14 players. No, teams barely needed 5, 6, in some cases 10 players, but not more than that. And I think Harsha Bhogle said it really, really well in his IPL auction review on Crickbus's YouTube channel, saying that teams had a lot of money for players, for a really, really small pool of players to choose from. That's why some of the players have gone for astronomical sums of money. And when we talk about astronomical sums of money, we have to talk about the Australian bowling duo of Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc. If the 2023 player auction and if you ask me personally, if the flavor of the month back in 2023 were English players, the flavor of this auction was clearly Australian players. It's almost like if your team does well in an ICC tournament leading up to the auction, you are bound to get a few players from that particular team on a very, very high price. Last year's auction saw huge sums of money being spent on the likes of Harry Brook, Ben Stokes and Sam Curran. This time it was Pat Cummins, Spencer Johnson, even though he didn't play in the World Cup, and obviously Mitchell Starc. Pat Cummins was the first one out of those two to come out of the hat because he was under the all-rounders section of the auction, and he went for a staggering 20.5 crores, being picked up by none other than the Sunrisers Supergiants. What am I saying? Hyderabad Sunrisers Hyderabad. Yeah. Sorry, I got my teams mixed up right there. But yeah, Sunrisers Hyderabad picking up Pat Cummins for 20.5 crores with a base price of 2 crores. So that already surpassed the highest bid a player had received in IPL auction history. Last season it was Sam Curran who got it for around 16 to 18 crores, but Pat Cummins became the first player in IPL auction history to surpass the threshold of 20 crores being poached by the Sunrisers Hyderabad. But then his record as the most expensive buy in IPL history didn't last for long, because 30 to 45 minutes later, his good buddy and Australian teammate Mitchell Starc came out of the hat, and he was picked up by Kolkata Knight Riders for a whopping 24.75 crore, almost touching 25 crore there. And if you look at in the grand scheme of things, a team is allowed 105 crores as your purse to build a squad, and you're basically spending around 24% of that on just one player, which is mesmerizing to say the least. But 24.75 crores for Mitchell Starc, 20.5 crores for Pat Cummins, who went to the Sunrisers Hyderabad. if you are interested, the third most expensive player was once again someone who has done well at the World Cup in the form of Darrell Mitchell. He went for 14 crores to the Chennai Super Kings, the defending champions. The most expensive Indian player at the auction, because don't forget, this is the Indian Premier League, so Indian players are always in demand. And Harshal Patel, the fast bowler who was let go by the Royal Challengers Bangalore, he was picked up for 11.75 crores by the Punjab Kings. Alzari Joseph was the fifth highest purchaser. He went for 11.5 crores to Royal Challengers Bangalore. Then we briefly mentioned Spencer Johnson, the Australian quick, going to the Gujarat Titans for 10 crores. And after that, it was and the prices kept going down and down. So I think there were 6 players who went above 10 crores, and after that there were uncapped Indian players who earned some big bucks. There was obviously a few overseas superstars who went for relatively cheap. I'm talking about the likes of Vanindu Hasaranga, Harry Brook. A few overseas superstars went unsold. We'll talk about them as well. But yeah, let's get back and talk about those Australian quicks in the form of Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins. I want to start by talking about Pat Cummins because not only has he been the second most expensive buy in IPL history and in this particular auction as well, but the 2023 calendar year as a whole has belonged to Pat Cummins, hasn't it? You see how much he's achieved in this year, and if there was a Ballon d'Or equivalent award in the cricketing fraternity, I think that award is being wholeheartedly deserved by Pat Cummins. He guided Australia to the World Test Championship final victory over India, helped Australia retain the Ashes against England. That's the test side of the things. If you look at the one-day side of things, then he helped Australia beat India in the World Cup final barely a month ago. And if you look at the T20 side of things, he's now earned 20.5 crores and is going to represent the Sunrisers Hyderabad in the IPL 2024. I think that's a really, really good pick if you personally ask me. Yes, he's gone for a lot of money, but Sunrisers are a really, really good team. My only problem with Sunrisers picking a player of Pat Cummins' caliber, and not to forget, they even purchased Travis Head for a fee of 6.8 crores as well. So 2 Australian greats, modern day legends in Sunrisers squad. But my only worry with Sunrisers is that you are only allowed to play 4 overseas players, and you already had a good group of overseas players in your squad even before the auction. So who are those 4 players who's going to play? Before the auction, they had Henrik Klassen, Glenn Phillips, and Aiden Markram was their captain, and Marco Jansen as their primary left-arm quick who could also give you a few runs with the bat lower down the order. So those were your 4 players. Now you have bolstered your overseas contingent by adding Travis Head and Pat Cummins to your ranks. So where are these going to fit in? You have to assume that if you are paying 20.5 crores for a player, you are going to play him for, let's say, not all 14 matches, but at least 12 out of those 14 matches. So you have to pick Pat Cummins. I think that's a mandatory pick now based on the silly final price he's earned. Aiden Markram will be picked because he's the captain not only of the Sunrisers Hyderabad side, but also the Sunrisers side which won the SA20 in South Africa. So I think he's a definite pick. You have paid 6.8 crores for Travis Head. Do you then pick him, or do you stick with someone like Glenn Phillips or Henrik Klassen? And Marco Jansen is a bowler. So then would you play someone like Pat Cummins in place of Marco Jansen? Someone like Travis Head in place of either Glenn Phillips or Henrik Klassen? Because Aiden Markram and Pat Cummins are there. So I think the choice for Hyderabad, and I think it's a cliche in footballing terms, it's a good headache to have, and I think that's a good headache to have if you are a Sunrisers fan or someone from the Sunrisers management, that you have so many good players to pick from. And if you're not even touching the Indian Indian part of the squad here. We are just talking about the overseas part, and there is so much discussions we can have here, because for me personally, I feel like Pat Cummins and Aiden Markram are definite players, and someone like Pat Cummins will be replacing Marco Jansen, even though I don't want that to happen. But then again, on the other side of things, you have to play him. And someone like Travis Head can replace someone like Glenn Phillips, but then Glenn Phillips is your only wicket-keeping option. So Travis Head cannot keep wicket. So yeah, so much confusion over there. But I think it's a really good pick as far as the Sunrisers are concerned. And I'm so happy that Pat Cummins is getting the recognition which he has always deserved. And 2003 will be remembered as the year for Pat Cummins. Swiftly moving into my personal favorite pick, and because I am a Kolkata Knight Riders fan, and that is that of Mitchell Starc. Mitchell Starc joining Kolkata Knight Riders for an astronomical 24.75 crores. And I think even before the auction, if you would have asked me who would be the top earner at the auction, my answer would have been Mitchell Starc or Pat Cummins, and I would have gone as far as to say that one of those two players would have been picked for the Kolkata Knight Riders, because KKR desperately needed a good fast bowler, a world-class fast bowler, because prior to the auction that they let go so many bowlers. Lockie Ferguson was let go, Tim Southee, Umesh Yadav, and those kind of players, even Shardul Thakur, to name four. So, and KKR had a lot of budget. I think before the auction they had like around 34 crores to spend. So I was pretty sure that Kolkata Knight Riders would go for either Mitchell Starc or Pat Cummins, and they would be right up there with the highest spenders in this auction. And I'm not surprised that I have been right here, because Mitchell Starc was badly needed, because last season, if you were following the Kolkata Knight Riders, you could see that they didn't have that X factor when it came to the bowling side of things. They always rely on their spinners, Suyash Sharma, Varun Chakravarti and Sunil Narine, but they lacked a quality fast bowler, something they expected likes of Lockie Ferguson or even someone like Shardul Thakur or Tim Southee to provide them, but they didn't. And Mitchell Starc is someone who has shown that he can produce on Indian pitches, and I think it's a really good buy, not only from the bowling side of things, but we also know for a fact that someone like Mitchell Starc is really good with the bat as well. Similar to someone like Marco Jansen, he can come down the order and whack a few runs here and there. He can give you those odd 15 runs of 6 deliveries when you need them the most. So I'm really happy with the arrival of Mitchell Starc. Yes, KKR and Mitchell Starc have had previous where KKR bought them in like 2017-ish, but unfortunately Mitchell Starc was not able to come and play in the IPL, and KKR felt a little betrayed by that. But apart from that, I feel like this is 100% a perfect buy for the Kolkata Knight Riders, and I'm sure even before going into the auction, KKR would have talked to Cricket Australia and to Mitchell Starc about his availability, and I'm assuming that Mitchell Starc has given them the assurance that he's going to play for the whole Indian Premier League regardless of any injuries, and that's why KKR were comfortable in spending this large sum of money. So those are Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins part of the auction of this episode as well. A thought for their strike partner in the form of Josh Hazlewood, who went unsold. Well, you see two of your buddies pick up more than 20 crore rupees and you are the one unsold. You got to feel bad for someone like Josh Hazlewood. But then again, for those of you who don't know, I think I read it on ESPN Cricinfo stating that Josh Hazlewood is only available from the month of May. So that is just 1/4 of an IPL, if you personally ask me, because I think him and his partner are expecting a baby around that time. That's why someone like Josh Hazlewood was let go by Royal Challengers of Bangalore prior to the auction, and B, not being picked in this auction as well. So yeah, that's the Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins story. Stay tuned to the Cricket Corner podcast, as after the break we talk about all the teams in general and recap the wonderful auction that we had yesterday. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of this auction special episode here on the Cricket Corner podcast. In this second part, we are going to talk about all 10 teams. I'll tell you the top picks which each of these 10 teams have gone for, and we'll briefly talk about them as we get along. So yeah, sit back, relax as we start by talking about the defending champions, the Chennai Super Kings. Super Kings had a big purse because they let go Ben Stokes for 16 crores. Ambati Rayudu retired, so that was 6 crore free as well. So 22 crores was just sitting, lying there. And they went and picked some really good players based on how Mahendra Singh Dhoni and CSK like. And their most expensive pick, and we talked about this in the first half of the episode as well, was none other than the New Zealander Darrell Mitchell. He was signed for 14 crores. Samir Rivsvi, never heard his name, to be honest with you. And a lot of cricketing experts around the world haven't heard his name as well, but he was involved in a bidding war with CSK and MI both looking to sign him. An Indian batter, he went for a whopping 8.4 crores, and this is the beauty of the IPL. Unheard players, uncapped Indian players can go for large sums of money if they are good enough, and that is credit to the scouting network that the IPL teams have all around India now. So Samir Rizvi, 8.4 crores, a magnificent buy if you personally ask me, because though I don't know him personally, but I'm assuming he's a really good player, because CSK is a side which doesn't like to spend a lot of money when they only spend money if and when required. And if they find someone unheard of and they think that 8.4 crore is a reasonable price for him, then I'm really excited to see how he goes along under the captaincy of MS Dhoni. They re-signed and welcome back, I should say, Shardul Thakur. He was let go by the Kolkata Knight Riders because he was on a hefty sum of money. CSK bought him back for 4 crores, so that's a good deal. Mustafizur Rahman being picked up for his base price of 2 crores towards the latter stages of the auction. I would say he's a good pick personally. He can be a replacement for someone like Pathirana if you want, because he's also really good at bowling those slower ball cutters towards the end of the innings, so that's a good pick. Rachin Ravindra, the man of the World Cup, everyone expected him to go for a hefty sum of money, but unfortunately he was picked, but he was picked for just 1.8 crores, so that's another bargain. And they also added an uncapped Indian wicketkeeper in the form of Avinash Rao Aravelli. So that's the Chennai Super Kings side. Really good side if you personally ask me. The addition of Darrell Mitchell and Rachin Ravindra along with Shardul Thakur would be massively important. I can see someone like Rachin Ravindra being the replacement for a Moeen Ali batting up the order, can give you a few overs of spin as well. Someone like Darrell Mitchell can bat in the middle order where Ambati Rayudu used to bat, and Shardul Thakur then can replace an overseas bowler in the form of either Pathirana or Tikshana and be there in the starting 11 to accommodate someone like Darrell Mitchell. Next up, Delhi Capitals. Delhi Capitals didn't have a big marquee signing if you personally ask me, but they have added a few snippets here and there to strengthen their already strong side, because we know for a fact that Rishabh Pant is going to be back, but we don't know whether he'll be a wicket keeper or not. So I think that is an interesting thing to put in mind, because the Delhi Capitals have gone on and signed 4 wicket keepers. They spent 7.2 crores on Kumar Kusharga. Then they spent 75 lakhs on Shea Hope. There was also the addition of Tristan Stubbs and Ricky Bhai, an Indian uncapped wicketkeeper. So 4 wicketkeepers added. Kumar Kushgra is someone I am thinking they are seeing as a Rishabh Pant replacement. Sorry for my pronunciation. But yeah, because spending 7.2 crores, I can assume that, and since he's an Indian as well, so he can be that Rishabh Pant replacement if they need someone to keep wickets. Then they picked up Jai Richardson, the Australian fast bowler, for 5 crores. Harry Brook was picked up in the auction. People were questioning whether Harry Brook deserves a place in the IPL because last season the Sunrisers paid around 13 crores from him, but in the end he wasn't able to perform well. Yes, he did score 1 century, but apart from that he didn't do much. But he was picked up for 4 crores. Sumit Kumar, 1 crore for him, and then there were a few uncapped Indian batters and bowlers towards the end of the auction as well. So nothing too fancy if you ask me, because Delhi Capitals, as I said, already a good side. David Warner, Prithvi Shaw, Mitch Marsh and Rishabh Pant. You have a great top 4 and you just needed a few players as replacements, and I think they've done a really good job. Then we talk about the Gujarat Titans, who had a large purse because they let go of their talismanic captain in the form of Hardik Pandya. I've already done an episode of that, so make sure you tune in. But they went and spent big on the bowling side of things. 10 crores on Spencer Johnson. Shah Rukh Khan, the Indian all-rounder, being picked for 7.4 crores. Umesh Yadav, 5.8 crores. Uncapped Indian wicketkeeper in the form of Robin Mins for 3.6 crores. Sushant Mishra, another uncapped Indian bowler, for 2.2 crores. I think there, if you personally ask me, the pick of the auction was made by the Gujarat Titans when they spent just 60 lakhs to get a bowler of Kartik Tyagi's experience of IPL, and I think that's a shrewd piece of business Ashish Nehra and his side have done. So I'm really happy to see Kartik Tyagi back. And Azmadullah Omarzai, the Afghani all-rounder, being picked up for 50 lakhs as well. And also Manav Shuthar, the Indian uncapped bowler, being picked up for 20 lakhs as well. We talked about Kolkata Knight Riders in the first part of this podcast, but let's run down their picks in this auction. 24.75 crores spent on Mitchell Starc. They also went ahead and bought in Mujib Rahman, the spinner from Afghanistan, for his base price of 2 crores towards the end of the auction. They also spent 1.5 crores on Sharfane Rutherford, the explosive West Indian batsman. Gus Atkinson, the English fast bowler, was picked up for his base price of 1 crore as well. And then they added a few interesting Indian picks who could be backup to anyone in the starting 11. Someone like Manish Pandey was picked up for just 50 lakhs. KS Bharat picked up for 50 lakhs as well. We all are aware of how bad the wicket-keeping situation was at KKR last season, where they were picking up players between Rahmadullah Gurbaz and Jagdishan. They have kept hold of Rahmadullah Gurbaz and they've added an Indian wicket-keeper to the ranks in the form of KS Bharat. Chetan Sakaria picked up for 50 lakhs as well. Really good business if you personally ask me. And then 20 lakh buys of Ankrish Raghuvanshi, Ramandeep Singh, who previously paid for the Mumbai Indians, and Shakib Hussain, the Indian uncapped bowler. Lucknow Super Giants were really quiet if you personally ask me at the auction. Didn't make a lot of noise here and there because they already had a good group of players and they just needed a few holes to fill in. They picked up Shivam Mavi for 6.4 crores. Siddharth, the uncapped Indian bowler, was picked up for 2.4 crores. David Willey, the English all-rounder, 2 crores for him. Ashton Turner for 1 crore. And a few Indian uncapped all-rounders for their base price of 20 lakhs. Mumbai Indians. I think Mumbai Indians have strengthened their bowling unit to the maximum here. Gerald Coetzee, 5 crores. Wonderful pick if you personally ask me, because everyone expected Gerald Coetzee to play for a Super King franchise because he's doing that in the MLC in SA T20. So it was assumed that he would just be a pick for the Chennai Super Kings, but that didn't happen. And just 5 crores for a talent of Gerald Coetzee's caliber, I think that's a really good pick if you personally ask me. Then they went ahead and signed Nuwan Tushara for 4.8 crores. People are comparing him with Vlasit Malinga, not only because he's a Sri Lankan, but his bowling action is pretty similar as well. Dilshan Madhushanka, one of the standout bowlers at the World Cup, he was picked up as well. He went for 4.6 crores. The legendary Afghanistan all-rounder Mohammad Nabi, to 1.5 crore for him. Then they picked up Shreyas Gopal as well for just I think backups and a few uncapped Indian all-rounders as well. Punjab Kings always have a tendency to spend big at the auction, and they did on 2 players. I think Harshal Patel explains why they've gone for someone like him. Not only is a good bowler, but he can give you a few runs down the order as well. 11.75 crores for him. Then this interesting pick of 8 crores for someone like Riley Russo. Riley Russo a year ago was in outstanding form as far as the T20 side is concerned. His form has dipped a little, but I think Punjab Kings still think that paying 8 crores for him was valid. Well, only time will tell. Chris Woakes, the English all-rounder, picked up for 4.2 crores. I think that's a really shrewd piece of business as well, because Chris Woakes did have a really good World Cup, and we have seen him bowl really well in the subcontinent over his illustrious career. So I think I'm personally quite happy with 4.2 crores for someone like Chris Woakes. And then there were a few uncapped players being picked up for that base price of 20 lakhs. One of them, Shashank Singh, was an accidental pick. Rajasthan Royals, personally similar to Lucknow Super Giants, didn't do much at the player auction. They went ahead and signed the very first player at the auction, which was Rahman Powell, 7.4 crores for him. Then Shubham Dubey, the Indian uncapped batter, for 5.8 crores. I think that's a very interesting buy. They went ahead and picked up Tom Collar Cadmore, the uncapped English wicketkeeper, for 40 lakhs. And I'm really interested to see what sort of scouting they've done behind him that they went ahead and picked him up for 40 lakhs where no other team were interested in him. So that's a really interesting buy. They picked up Berger, the South African pace bowler, for 50 lakhs as well. So that could be a replacement or a backup for someone like Trent Bolt towards the latter stages of the IPL. So that's an interesting pick as well. Moving to the Royal Challengers Bangalore, who needed an entire bowling unit because they let go the likes of Josh Hazelwood, Vanindu Hasaranga, Harshal Patel, to name a few. And they went ahead and yes, they have picked up some bowlers with IPL experience, but their form has been questionable to say the least. Alzari Joseph for 11.5 crores was picked. Alzari Joseph is one of West Indies' best bowlers if you personally ask me, but in the ongoing T20 series against England, he's going for a few runs. Phil Salt and Josh Butler are taking him to salt, so he's not been in the best of forms recently. But in general, he was part of the Gujarat Titans squad, which won the IPL 2 years back. So he does have IPL pedigree. So I guess 11.5 crores is worth it in the end. Yash Dayal, another one from the Gujarat Titans squad, picked up for 5 crores. IPL enthusiasts would know that he is the bowler against whom Rinku Singh hit 5 sixes in a row to win the game in the last over. So once again, recency bias not showing this as a good pick. Lockie Ferguson, 2 crores for him. He's had IPL pedigree. Last season he didn't have the best of the series, but once again part of the Gujarat Titans squad. You can see a pattern emerging here. Tom Curran was a surprise pick because he was someone going under the radar. No one expected him to him to be sold in this auction, but he's been picked up for 1.5 crores as well, and a few uncapped Indian players in the form of Saurav Chauhan and Swapnil Singh. Sunrisers Hyderabad, we talked about them in the first half of this podcast, where they spent 20.5 crores on Pat Cummins. They also brought in Travis Head for 6.8 crores. Jaidev Unadkat, Indian fast bowler, possibly as a backup for someone like Bhuvneshwar Kumar, T. Natarajan and Umran Malik. He's been picked up for 1.6 crores. Vanindu Hasaranga, yet another buy of the window. For me personally, just 1.5 crores for an elite Sri Lankan all-rounder who had an excellent Sri Lankan Premier League prior to the World Cup. So he's coming in with some form as well. And then a couple of Indian uncapped bowlers for their base price of 20 lakhs, with Akash Singh being one of them. So yeah, that's the all-round recap of what happened at the player auction yesterday. A couple of notable absentees, if you personally like me, or players who weren't picked at the auction, include Phil Salt. For me personally, I felt like a player of Phil Salt's caliber would have been picked, because IPL is basically recency bias. And if you want to look at recency bias, prior to the auction, he scored a century against West Indies. He then didn't get picked yesterday, and yesterday after the auction there was once again another T20, and he scored yet another one or T20 century, back-to-back T20 centuries for Phil Salt. But still, no IPL contract for him. For me personally, I would have assumed that a team like KKR would have gone on and picked him at his base price towards the accelerated auction section, because they've always had trouble with wicket keepers over the past couple of years since Dinesh Karthik was let go. Rahmatullah Gurbaz, he has been up and down with form, and if they wanted an overseas wicket-keeping backup, I think someone like Phil Salt would have been magnificent option. But alas, for Phil Salt, he is not part of the auction. Could be picked to as the IPL gets nearer and nearer, and a player picks up an injury and has a replacement. So they never say never if you are Phil Salt. Then of course the other one being Steve Smith, who has had good BBL experience recently. He scored a few hundreds in BBL, but IPL franchises are just not impressed by his form. So no contract for him as well. But yeah, 72 players sold, 230 crores spent on them, 24.75 crores being the highest. Mitchell Starc to the Kolkata Knight Riders. Really looking forward to the IPL now. To end this podcast, for me personally, the best squad after the auction, I think that is the Sunrisers Hyderabad. And for me, yes, I'm a Kolkata Knight Riders fan and I could be biased, but I think KKR have had the best player auction yesterday. Let me know your thoughts about the IPL auction and whom you are cheering for the 2024 IPL. You can let me know on Twitter or in the comment section. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. This is me, Vatsal Vora, signing off. Ciao for now.